Oh, let's continue the conversation. French President François Hollande has announced that France will invest billions in renewable energy and the electrification of the African continent. President Hollande met with heads of state from countries including Chad, Niger, and Egypt on the emergence of the ongoing United Nations Climate Summit, which began in Paris on Monday at a forum which discussed threats including desertification and the pollution of the Lake Chad Basin.
President Hollande said developed countries had a responsibility, having emitted greenhouse gases for decades, which have left many African countries struggling with droughts, flooding, and migration.
The world, and particularly the developed world, owes an ecological debt to Africa.
The president committed €2 billion for renewable energy, a 50% increase over the period 2016 to 2020.
Every substantial part of our effort will benefit Africa, particularly the electrification of the continent, without waiting for 2020.
The president of the African Development Bank, Akinwumi Adesina, says Africa could not be left to foot the bill for global climate change.
Africa, the least emitter of greenhouse gases in the world, now suffers the most from climate change. Others pollute, Africa pays, and pays dearly. Lake Chad is almost gone, and the sand dunes are encroaching the Sahel. We must not abandon Africa. Africa has been shortchanged by climate change. Africa must not be shortchanged by climate finance.
The project aims to boost carbon storage capacity, combat desertification, and hold up a mass exodus of populations living in the region. Efforts which France hopes will bring greater economic stability to the region. The chairperson of the African Union Commission also noted that global warming disproportionately affected Africa.
It is for this reason that the African Unified Voice at this summit calls for a comprehensive, legally binding instrument applicable to all parties within a global governance framework and encompasses the issues of mitigation, adaptation, financing, and technology transfer.
The French presidency of the Climate Change Summit sees Africa as crucial to the success of the summit, which gathers representatives from 195 parties in the northern suburbs of Paris to agree to a legally binding framework to limit global warming.
So as the issue of global warming continues to make headlines, experts have emphasized the need for the continent to focus on renewable energy to increase sources of clean and sustainable energy. This comes as thousands discuss climate change at a conference in Paris. And I've been joined by the CEO of Alliance Global Corporate and Specialty Africa, Delphine Meadow. She's live to us here in the studio. Good afternoon. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
We appreciate that. $16 billion from France, that's quite a lot of money at this very difficult time anywhere in the world you talk about it. So how should this money be spent?
I think one thing that we need to make sure we do is to protect this investment. 16 billion spent in Africa. We need to make sure that when we're putting into infrastructure projects and building these new sources of energy, that we are also protecting the investment. So that's where insurance comes into the picture.
Your specialty is in corporate specialty, credit, reinsurance, and whatever you. That's what you do every day. You're in Lagos, you're in Nigeria to be part of a conference on project management, risk management, and so from your point of view, how much has been done in Africa? Have we done it well based on the few things we've done as far as the energy is concerned? How and what areas have we not done so well?
Let me share some statistics with you that I was reading just recently. When you look at the power sector in Africa, you look at the 47 countries in sub-Saharan Africa, they produce about 70,000 megawatts for about 800 million people. That comparable to Spain, that produces the same amount of power, but for 45 million people. So you can tell already there's a big gap. There's more that can be done. You look at also the insurance sector, and as we try to combine the two, insurance penetration is very low in Africa, hovering about 2%. In Nigeria, it's even less than the average, less than 1%. So it's important that as investments are coming and as we are building projects, that we ensure that the governments are also supporting ensuring these assets as they are coming online.
Ensuring these assets were outside South Africa and perhaps Egypt. The rest of Africa, when you talk about big insurance, big ticket insurance transactions for the energy sector, we're just not there yet.
Yeah, and which is unfortunate. You look at some of these countries, you take at South Africa, for example, there's been a lot of losses that come from the energy sector. A power plant blows up, or the theft of cables or things like that. Without insurance, then it gives, it's difficult for the company or the power sector to rebuild itself.
So what solutions, therefore, suit the continent?
Upskilling people is key, because first, people need to trust the insurance sector. But also, insurance is not just about risk transfer, it's also about risk management. A lot of insurance companies in Africa need to make sure that we are upskilling people to understand the risks that come from building a power plant or operating a power plant. So that's quite important for us to focus on as well.
Talk to us about some country specifics. You're from Burkina Faso, you work and operate out of South Africa and a few other African countries. You're in Nigeria currently. If you look at looking at the entire energy sector in Africa, yes, you've seen the numbers, giving us the headline figures about output versus population. The ratio, they're quite significantly low. Are there things that have been done in some countries that you think provide some sense of direction as to where we're going, as we're stepping away from dirty energy conversation into clean energy conversation?
I see a lot being done, but not enough. If I look at Burkina, we've been doing a lot when it comes to solar energy, but there's still more that needs to be done, and that require investment. So that's why the pledge from France and from the other leaders across the world is important. But I also see that looking at both private and public sector, it's important that the public sector doesn't just take ownership of this, but private sector needs to do that. You take an example of Alliance, where we've decided to divest into any company that generates more than 30% of the revenue from coal. And in the next few years, we will be investing 4 billion euros into wind power, for example. And those investments in general should be focused on Africa.
Also, you're part of the $1.6 trillion gang up by fund managers around the world against dirty energy producers.
Yes.
So look at a country like South Africa.
Yeah.
The energy crisis in SA, ongoing now for more than a year, running to almost 2 years, quite surprising for this, one of the second largest economy and the most developed economy on the African continent. Give us, what's your reading of the South African energy situation?
It's a difficult situation. It's getting better, but when you look back, we had 99 days of load shedding in South Africa in 2015 overall. And I was just reading a report earlier that says that those 99 days pretty much reduced contracted GDP by about 1.3% in Q3 of 2015. That tells you a lot about the impact of power and the need of power for the economic development of any country. South Africa is quite a diversified economy. We're looking at manufacturing and mining. The lack of power has a big impact on it, but we're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, I believe.
Let's wrap this up on risk management and insurance, and we'll go back to the issue of insurance. A number of key African economies, Nigeria, Kenya, are facing serious insecurity, terror, insurgency on the upscale, and these are countries in which I'm sure some of your new projects in renewable will be cited. Right. What are the risk issues here? This, of course, definitely will ramp up the insurance package for such energy assets. Yeah.
The risks, especially with the terror attacks across the continent, are vast, because insurance also has an impact on that. While we're insuring certain projects, and then we have a terror attack in the middle of it, it's something that needs to be handled. The insurance sector globally has started now including terror attacks in part of the insurance package. That's something that wasn't done prior to September 11th. And I think after that, in the past 10 years, there's been a lot of development on making sure that we're aligning with that. We've just launched a project on crisis management in Africa, and we've been talking to many people across the continent on how to manage a crisis when it happens, which be it terrorism or product recall or any other issue like that.
We're going to have this conversation with you some other day. We'll keep an eye on those projects.
Please.
The one you're getting out of and the one you're getting into.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
CEO of Alliance Strategy, Alliance Global Corporate and Strategy Specialty, South Africa, Delphine Maidu. The South America's largest economy is in recession, but how bad are things going down there in that country? We'll be back with that.